Unremarkable clerk Timothy Morris had a blind date with a girl named Melissa. Tim only knew that she was a brunette with blue eyes. They've never seen each other in person before. Melissa was supposed to be waiting for him at the restaurant. Tim approached a gorgeous brunette, mistaking her for Melissa. However, it turned out that she wasn't Melissa, and in fact this woman was here with her husband. It would have ended in a fight if the real Melissa, the one everyone calls Missy, hadn't intervened. This girl looked nothing like Tim had expected. Nevertheless, he decided to continue the date. From the first seconds, Missy began to behave oddly, suggesting that Tim was 65 years old and wore a wig. However, the worst was yet to come. When the waitress came to take their order, Missy asked for 2 tequilas, but Tim said he didn't drink. Missy began speculating aloud about why he didn't drink. Tim felt ashamed of his new acquaintance. After Missy confessed her love to him, Tim realized he needed to escape right now. Under the pretext of going to the restroom, Tim left the table and tried to escape through the window, but Missy caught him at it. Tim lied that he just wanted to surprise her by entering the restaurant through the main entrance and sneaking up behind her. Missy started laughing loudly. Tim politely asked her to leave, saying he needed to use the restroom. When Missy, still making dumb jokes, left, Tim climbed out the window and fell. Hearing his screams, Missy came running, and despite protests, set his sprain right. 3 months passed. The company where Tim works had a vacancy for the head of sales, and Tim was among the candidates for promotion. The company is about to hold a corporate party. From his colleague Nate, the head of the HR department, Tim learned that his former fiancée Julia would attend the party with her new boyfriend Rich. Tim doesn't want to admit it, but he still misses Julia and is having a hard time getting over their breakup. 3 months have passed since the date with Missy, but after that experience, Tim is hesitant to go on any more dates. Tim is going on a trip to New York and arrived at the airport, where he happened to run into a very beautiful girl. It was love at first sight. They accidentally switched their bags, so Tim had to catch up with the girl. They laughed together about the situation. Since both Tim and the girl were late for their flights, they decided to go to a restaurant and get to know each other better. Turns out they had a lot in common. Like Tim, Missy doesn't drink. They also love the same books and music. The girl admitted that she hadn't enjoyed conversation this much in a long time. Tim felt the same. When Missy shared that she was divorced after her husband's infidelity, Tim said he went through the same. His fiancée also left him for someone else. They understand each other like no one else. Before parting ways, they exchanged phone numbers and agreed on a date. Tim can't believe his luck. It turns out the girl's name is also Melissa. Tim realized he met the woman of his dreams. That same evening Tim wanted to text Melissa, but was afraid of seeming foolish. In the end Melissa texted him first, asking why he had waited so long. At first Tim gave boring one-word answers to make Melissa more interested. At one point she asked Tim to send explicit photos, which he did not expect. Tim had not come across anything like this before, nevertheless he took and sent the photos. The next day Tim shared this with Nate, who couldn't wait to see Melissa. As it turned out, she participated in a beauty contest and even won. Nate advised Tim to invite Melissa to the company's corporate event in Hawaii. However, Tim doubted it was a good idea, considering they had known each other for only a week. Then Nate, who had access to all the employees' emails, texted Melissa on behalf of Tim. Now there was no turning back for Tim. Tim waited for Melissa on the plane with a bouquet of flowers. But instead of Melissa, the same Missy appeared, with whom he had a terrible date 3 months ago. Tim realized he had mixed up the names and had been texting the wrong girl all this time. Tim was about to explain to Missy that it was a mistake, but suddenly she said he saved her life. As it turned out some time ago, Missy, standing on the tallest bridge in Portland, contemplated taking a step down but couldn't decide. Tim's message made her change mind. Tim realized he couldn't make it through the weekend without drinking. But Missy, thinking he was a former alcoholic, didn't let him do that, drinking all the tequila herself. 35-year-old Missy was thrilled with Hawaii and the luxurious hotel. Tim would have gladly escaped, but it was too late to back out. The last people he wanted to meet here were his ex-fiancée Julia and her boyfriend Rich. Nevertheless it happened, and Tim had to introduce them to Missy, who continued to behave foolishly and make inappropriate jokes. In the hotel room, Tim tried to convey to Missy that there could be nothing between them, but she seemed not to hear him. Missy was clearly set on something else. Tim said he had a meeting with the boss and hurried to get away. First thing, Tim told Nate about his failure. Nate advised him to tell Missy the truth, but Tim couldn't do it because he was afraid she might harm herself. The boss, Jack Winstone, really wanted to meet Tim's girl, whom Nate praised so much. Tim said that Melissa supposedly felt unwell after the flight, so she wouldn't be able to attend the party. But suddenly Missy appeared and began to act up, making inappropriate jokes. Tim, who was very embarrassed for her, hurried to get Missy out of here. Tim tried to explain to her that this was a very important event, so she should behave decently and restraint. However, within a few minutes, Missy, who clearly had too much to drink, started attracting everyone's attention. Everyone considered her a fool and couldn't understand how Tim could date someone like her. But that was just half of the trouble. Missy went on stage and started dancing, then continued to drink one cocktail after another. For the other partygoers, it was like a free circus. At some point Missy was approached by Jess, nicknamed Barracuda, the second candidate for promotion and Tim's main competitor, and suggested a little adventure. When Tim learned that Missy was going to jump from a rocky shore into the ocean, he immediately rushed there. Many spectators gathered around Missy. Tim begged her to change her mind, but she did it anyway. The height was significant. Although Missy missed the water, she was unharmed. Later, Tim brought her to the room. He didn't want to be alone with Missy, but it seemed he had no choice. The next morning Missy snored loudly. Tim escaped, unaware that Missy had woken up. Tim joined the yacht trip with Jack and colleagues. Seeing Missy running to the pier, Tim panicked and shouted that they needed to sail away urgently. Missy jumped after the yacht, but missed. Tim hoped for the best, but after a minute, he saw a hand clinging to the yacht's side. Missy was here. Jack, wearing a diving suit, was about to go down into the water to see a shark. The boss suggested that Tim keep him company. He tried to refuse and hinted to Missy to play along, but Missy on the contrary started urging him to do it. Tim has claustrophobia, but he can't refuse the boss. Julia tried to dissuade her former fiancé from this dubious idea, saying it's not worth it. But Tim assured her that everything was fine. While the men were diving, Missy, who knew that Jack Winstone really wanted to see a shark, wanted to throw fish into the water as bait. Command tried to stop the crazy girl and accidentally spilled the fish on her. Missy vomited directly into the water. Surprisingly, the shark took the bait. Watching the huge predator circling around them, Tim began to panic and accidentally ripped Jack's diving mask off. Tim managed to surface and asked for help. Command pulled him out first, then Jack, who was already unconscious. Missy began to administer first aid. Fortunately, everything ended well. After this unsuccessful yacht trip, Tim reprimanded Missy for her childish behavior. Missy claimed that if he wanted to spend the vacation with a girl who would sit in the hotel all the time, he chose the wrong one. Suddenly Tim received a message from the same Melissa he met at the airport. Perhaps he still has a chance. In the hotel, Tim overheard Missy discussing his height with their neighbor Barbara. Tim didn't like that Missy behaved foolishly and wouldn't shut up for a minute. Hearing that Missy was heading to the spa with their neighbor Barbara, Tim felt relieved because he was about to meet with colleagues. The talent show was coming up soon, and he couldn't afford to lose to Barracuda. However, when Tim learned from Nate that their room neighbors were Jack Winstone and his wife Barbara, he didn't care about anything else. It turns out that Missy is in the spa right now with Barbara, Jack's wife. Tim immediately rushed there but was too late. The administrator said that the tall brunette had left with an older woman who looked very upset some time ago. When Tim returned to the hotel, Missy was already here. As it turned out, she advised Barbara to get a divorce. Of course, Missy didn't know that Barbara's husband was Jack Winstone. Moreover, it turned out that on the bridge, Missy was going to bungee jump, not voluntarily pass away. Tim got it wrong because Missy had said he saved her. But she only meant the potential life risk. Jack and Barbara could be heard arguing through the wall. In the end he left. Tim told Missy to make things right by any means necessary. Meanwhile, Jack was getting drunk in the pool. Missy joined him without an invitation and directly said she was the psychologist who brainwashed Barbara. But in Missy's opinion, she did everything right because Jack doesn't respect his wife. Jack didn't want to continue this conversation, so he immediately got out of the pool but slipped and fell. Despite protests, Missy said his dislocation and advised him to reconsider his attitude toward marriage. Tim realizes this is a disaster. Knowing that after something like this he had no chance of a promotion, Tim was going to return to Portland and start looking for a new job. However, Missy stopped him, saying that she just spoke with Barbara and Jack. It seems they decided to give their marriage a second chance. This evening there was the talent show from the company. All employees performed, showcasing their skills in an attempt to impress the boss. Tim was very surprised that the boss applauded him so actively. He asked Missy what her secret was. Missy said she simply brainwashed him using her psychologist skills. It was the turn of Barracuda and her team to take the stage. They performed a vibrant musical number. However, Jack was not impressed. Moreover, thanks to Missy's hypnosis, he felt disgust. Throughout the performance, Jack felt nauseous and couldn't do anything about it. Obviously Tim's team won. Now Jack is delighted with both Missy and Tim. To say that Tim is shocked is an understatement. He invited Missy to have dinner. She turned out to be a very versatile person. Missy shared how after her father's passing, she took various courses in hopes of making friends. Therefore, she has many different skills. When Missy asked him why he doesn't drink, Tim finally admitted that he behaves inadequately when intoxicated. Looking at the couple laughing and looking happy, Julia felt envy. Rich is a boring guy with whom there is nothing to talk about. Getting a message from Melissa, Tim ignored it. He didn't care about her now. Julia still couldn't take her envious gaze off them, so she later came to their room to talk to Tim. But he wasn't there. Nevertheless, Missy kindly offered Julia to wait for him here. Meanwhile, Tim, who was with Nate, confessed that he was starting to like Missy. When Tim returned, he saw Missy and Julia drinking wine and having a pleasant conversation. It seems they found common ground. Missy understands that there are still feelings between Tim and Julia, so she doesn't mind if they want to reminisce about old times. Julia is convinced that only in this way can they move forward. Despite his embarrassment, Tim agreed. However, somehow unnoticed, Julia became a third wheel and was forced to simply leave. The next day a beach party took place. Jack Winstone wished it to be a themed party so that everyone could dress as they liked and not be afraid to look foolish. Jess stays close to Jack, telling him about her ideas for promoting the company's services in the market. But Jack made it clear that he is not interested in her proposal. Tim's candidacy, on the contrary, suits him completely. And though Jess's performance is much better, Jack decided to rely on intuition and give the position of the head of sales department to Tim. Seeing Jack and Tim hugging, Jess became even more angry. She understands that somehow Missy somehow influenced it. Jess is also aware that Missy is here by mistake. Approaching the girl, she hinted at it. Later in the room, Missy tried to pretend that everything was fine. However, while Tim was in the shower, she got into his phone, and reading the messages with another Melissa, made sure that he intended to invite the other Melissa to the airport. Exiting the shower and not finding Missy, Tim realized that she knew the truth. He looked for her everywhere. Suddenly Melissa appeared, deciding to surprise Tim. Getting into a cab, Missy saw it. It turned out that Jess had invited Melissa here. She and Tim had lunch at a restaurant. Tim spoke reluctantly, and he also drank a lot, which Melissa didn't like. Now, after meeting Missy, he is not afraid to look foolish, so being drunk, he walked on his hands. Accidentally falling, Tim remembered all the days spent with Missy and realized that he loves her. Tim wanted to be honest and told Melissa directly that he met someone else. She is not as perfect as Melissa, and rather even crazy. But that's what Tim likes about her. Melissa took it understandingly and advised Tim to run after his true love right now. He returned to Portland and sent dozens of messages to Missy, but she didn't want to see him. So the days went by. Tim still hopes that his beloved will forgive him and come back, but there are no messages from her. Missy's hypnosis stopped working on Jack, so he fired Tim. That evening, Missy was in the restaurant. She had another blind date here. However, Missy didn't suspect that all this time Tim had been texting her from a fake account. Just like Tim during their first date, Missy accidentally approached another guy. He didn't mind the conversation at all, but Tim interrupted them, admitting that he is the guy from the dating site. Tim apologized to Missy and said that he misses her a lot. Tim no longer wants to depend on the boss's opinion and others. From now on, he will enjoy life and do crazy things like Missy. She forgave him. Now they will be together forever. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel not to miss more exciting new products. Also, the authors will be pleased if you leave your opinion in the comments.